Yes, we are talking about another Bears win on the Take the North podcast. Bears 26, Saints 14, along with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic. I am Mark Grote of The Score. Dan and I were both at Soldier Field for the game. Then the locker room afterwards, talking to players and coaches in the interview room for DeAndre Swift and for Caleb Williams on this joyous day. And Dan, a lot of fours going on. That is 4 straight wins for your Chicago Bears to make it 4 wins on the season. The Bears are now 4-2, a game in which the Bears forced 4 more turnovers and ran the ball really well. Dan is still right now, if you're watching on YouTube, you get a nice treat. He is still at Soldier Field with the beautiful scenery of an empty Soldier Field, but behind him it looks very, very romantic. And if I had had just a little more discipline, I would have stayed at Soldier Field, but I had about an hour to kill, Dan, and I just couldn't do it, so I walked back to my South Loop home. So thank you, Dan, for being there and milking in this 26-14 win over the Saints.
I get it. People are going to have to put up with your boring background, and I'll give them this beautiful field behind me where the Bears won their 4th consecutive game today, Grote. And like you say, it's not to be taken for granted around these parts. We don't get 4-game winning streaks in Chicago very often. We're going to dive into some of the ugliness within the performance. I will give full disclosure here that given the division of labor at The Athletic covering the game after the game, Kevin Fishbane was focusing specifically on the defense, so he got to spend more time with the unit that really excelled and starred in this game. The offense, kind of a mixed bag, a really strong running game, but a lot of sloppiness that you could feel in the voices of the players as well as Coach Ben Johnson, that there's some frustration about the performance, albeit in a double-digit win, which is not to be taken lightly.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I mean, yeah, the Caleb Williams, 15 of 26, 172 yards. He was picked off in this game. And you just look at, and we're going to get to all the good stuff because I did spend a lot of time with the defense as well, Dan. So I could add some insight on some of the fellows were telling me about the defense and what they had going down. But let's focus a little bit. Let's get the Caleb stuff out the way because this was not a great day for Caleb, not a great day for the offense. First drive, second play. Caleb Williams, I've talked about this slowly but steadily. He has a ball batted down. Third play of the game, a false start by your rookie left tackle, Theo Benedette. Eventually, the Bears have to punt on their second drive. You had which was a field goal, but it should have been more. You had the Munji 14-yard run and then a fumbled snap. I don't know who that was on. Was that a Caleb fumble, or do you give that one to Drew Dahlman?
Drew Dahlman took 100% ownership of it in the locker room. He said that it was a cadence issue, that he was the one that was out of sorts on. Caleb, in his own press conference, said, look, I can take some blame for that too because I'm kind of responsible for the cadence. So it'll be interesting to see if Ben Johnson has any more clarity on that on Monday when we circle back with him. But it's an unforgivable error, and it happened twice down on plays inside the red zone, once in the first quarter, as you mentioned, again in the third quarter on 4th and goal from the 1, where the Bears actually got called for a very fortunate false start penalty on the biffed quarterback center exchange, because that would have been a turnover on downs. They were able to squeeze 3 points out of the drive and get their lead back to 2 scores. But that's representative, Mark, as you were detailing there, of some of the sloppiness that played into the day where the Bears didn't consistently take advantage of the opportunities that their defense was providing.
Yeah, and we saw that earlier in the year, and the Bears did get away with it, and that was a win, just like they got away with it against the Saints. They got away with the same sort of thing against the Raiders, and what it does show, what this game showed, although not even, the defense was the better side of the ball today in terms of, Caleb Williams in the passing game. We'll get to DeAndre Swift, but at least you are showing that you are beating the teams you are supposed to beat this year. And I don't know about you, Dan. I know it got a little tight at the end of the first half with the Tyreek Stevenson blown coverage of Chris Olave, and then eventually they score another touchdown. It starts to get a little sweaty, and then the Bears get it back on. But even then, while there was that like semi sense of doom and are the Bears going to blow it, most of my brain was saying the Bears are playing so well today defensively that they're going to be okay.
Well, look, I think you, me, and Studs all predicted a double-digit win for the Bears, and part of that stemmed from how flawed the Saints are, right? You didn't feel a team coming into the day that was going to threaten you in ways that were going to make you really uncomfortable unless you made yourself really uncomfortable. And that seemed to play itself out today in a game where the Bears, again, led from start to finish. But you do bring up a very interesting sequence because the Bears are up big. Is it 20-0, right, at the end of the first half with the ball and a chance to go tack onto that lead, either make it 23-0 or 27-0 and really put the game away. And they go 3 and out on a very critical offensive possession that not only did they not pick up a first down, they didn't use any clock and then allowed the Saints to go 91 yards on a 2-minute drive in less than a minute, with Spencer Rattler hitting a couple big pass plays there to get them in the end zone. And again, it did become a close game. And so those are the types of things that against a more quality opponent, they're going to come back and bite you. And I think the Bears are very cognizant of that. I think the theme from the offensive guys in the locker room, Grote, was almost through an optimist lens that look like we see the long list of things that are on our cleanup list, and yet we're still winning games, right? And when you can win games and play a little bit sloppy, the general theme, Jonah Jackson, DeAndre Swift, a bunch of guys saying, imagine what it's going to look like if we can start to match the consistent production that the defense is putting forth. And I think that's the dream scenario for the Bears as the season goes along.
Yeah, Caleb sounded real grown up because he was saying the same thing. He was basically saying, yeah, the offense wasn't good enough, and we got to match what the defense is doing. And he kind of said, paraphrasing, what if? And he kind of was like, his tone was, I'll get this. Don't worry. I know it's not there yet, but it's going to come. And you just wait to see what this looks like. And that, of course, is the dream, Dan, because the part about this is, and this is a good win. This was fun to watch.
Yeah.
And we in Chicago know what it looks like when there's good defense and good running. We know that is for real. But the one part that has eluded this franchise for decades and has cost them playoff wins is passing game. So it does make you think, do not waste it again. If this defense really is this good and turnover happy, which is hard to sustain, then really, then we're playing this game of, can the passing game, can the offense catch up, and specifically the downfield throws?
Look, the Bears have created at least 3 takeaways in each of their 4 victories. And that's a trend that is very encouraging. And it is without question now a trend. A months long track record of production is a trend, but you and I both know that you can't count on 3 or 4 takeaways every game. And so your offense has got to find some of that pop, some of that balance. It wasn't there today in the passing game. Caleb at times was spinning himself in circles. He referenced after the game sort of his own unfamiliar hesitance to just take off and scramble for positive yardage. He was kind of doing the scramble and throw thing, which you want to see, but maybe passed up some opportunities to just run for 5 yards and keep the play moving and keep the drive going in a way that's productive, and acknowledge that himself. He's been having some difficulty throwing on the move as well, and that seems to be frustrating him. You can see, Grote, this like 2 sides of Ben Johnson, where you get the post-game video from the Bears of the locker room celebration and the intensity and the jubilation that he has, justifiably. Then moments later, when he comes to meet with us in the press room for the press conference, you can see the very sober-eyed head coach who knows he's got to go back home tonight or back to the office, wherever he goes, and start to dissect this game video to make his list of corrections and to show his offense this isn't good enough, and we've got to get there. He said himself, after 6 games, I expected to be playing a cleaner brand of football, and they're not. And so they've got to get there. A lot of that revolves around how they can get this quarterback to get unlocked in a way where he's consistently making plays. But as you've referenced a couple times here, thank God for that awakened running game that was so stagnant through the first month of the season, but in the last 7 days now has absolutely exploded with 367 rushing yards against the Commanders and Saints, and DeAndre Swift looking like the kind of potential Pro Bowl type back that the Bears believe he can be at his peak.
Yeah, 19 carries, 124 yards, a touchdown. He had 1 catch for 14 yards, and he's getting these really big, like the touchdown run, 11 yards. The third quarter field goal drive, he had runs of 15 yards and 17 yards to make that possible. Fourth quarter field goal drive, a 23-yard run and a 14-yard catch to bail out Caleb Williams, who was about to go down. Or maybe we give the credit to Caleb Williams on that, because that was pretty masterful.
Cool play, yeah.
It was a cool play. I mean, I was pretty amazed that, I mean, it looked like he was like, if we stopped it in slow motion, his back is probably pretty close to the turf. Yeah, yeah. He's like just sidewinding, man. But yeah, it ended up being a pretty cool play. But hey, man, I think we talked about it last week. We all picked the over for DeAndre Swift and it was set at something ridiculous like 53. But I said between 70 and 85 yards for this game. Swift looks legit. Some of the run blocking looked legit, and you just see, as who was it? Benedette told us in the locker room, you just give that guy a little crease and he's very explosive. And we're being reminded of that about DeAndre Swift last year, and we just didn't see much of it last year.
Yeah, it's the crease, and then it's the patience, right? To let that crease develop and then hit it, which DeAndre did several times today. Where from our view up here in the press box, you can see it, kind of unfolding, and you're like, oh, it's going to be there. It's there. Boom, he hits it, and it's a big run, and the offense gets some of that momentum that it needs. I think you bring up some really good points about how all-encompassing this running game is. Caleb said after the game, he sort of credited two things. He said a mentality that the entire group has sort of dedicated itself to running the ball with authority and with purpose. They're doing that. There's been some motions and shifts that they've included both pre-snap and then after the snap comes with some movement that they believe is displacing defenders and allowing them to be more efficient with their blocks and creating some of these creases. Then you talk to the linemen and they just feel like this is an ongoing progression of getting more comfortable with one another, developing that cohesion, just making gradual natural improvement. And what I love most about this, Grote, is like Ben told you from the day he got here and his track record in Detroit showed you that this was the case, that he was going to be dedicated to the run game. And so when they struggled through the first 4 games of the season, it wasn't like, oh, well, maybe we're not so good at the run. It was, no, we're going to get this bleeping thing figured out and we're going to put our heads together to find every answer we can. And if we can just get X, Y, Z and ABC put together, now we can have a functional running game. Well, it's been very functional these last 2 games, and that's got to give you a lot of juice going into this next stretch of football.
I mean, my God, the compliment that Kyle Munji played to DeAndre Swift on this day as well. 13 carries, 81 yards.
And what about the carry he had? I think it was in the first half where they didn't get credit for a touchdown, but they pushed that damn pile into the end zone, in the north end zone, and then the officials made some call that his feet were off the ground, and so forward progress had been stopped. I never saw forward progress stopped on that. Did you?
Not from our angle. Now that was the far side of the field. You're a little bit closer where you're situated in the press box, but not by much. So I didn't see any of that, but it did sound funny. I don't think it just sounds funny hearing about any 200-pound man being lifted off the ground, but I guess this is football. But that was, like I said, 6.5. And he had another play, maybe in the third quarter. I don't remember, it was a catch or a run where he was dragging guys for like 2 or 3 yards or so. And that's how you get into the NFL. If you are Kyle Munji and you squeak in as a 7th rounder, what I think I like about him, and really this is probably most 7th rounders, he comes across as very coachable because he really is doing things differently already in terms of, like you said, not just the crease, but hitting that hole right away. We've seen Kyle Munji, I think, early on in some of the carries that he was getting a little bit too happy with the feet, including moving backwards at times. I'm not saying that he is solved and Munji is an 80 to 100-yard runner every week, but boy, is he taken some steps forward since the beginning of the year.
Look, and you want to have, that 2-back approach and the ability to kind of mix and match and get things going. Listen, anybody that's followed this podcast for a normal amount of time knows the way I feel about DeAndre Swift and the way he goes about his business, right? And that's what you gravitate towards. And so this is a guy that comes off this big performance Monday in Washington. He's beat up. It's a short week of practice. His groin's bothering him. He's limited all week in practice. He winds up questionable on the injury report. And you're like, what are you going to be able to expect from him? Well, the people in that locker room know what to expect from DeAndre. He's going to be a gamer. He's going to get himself ready. He's going to take advantage of opportunities. And so you heard some of that echoed today too, is some of that Swift appreciation. Particularly, I think you've heard it more in the last 10 days or so from Ben Johnson in terms of his belief in who DeAndre Swift is as a back. And now you add Munji into the mix and you've got the makings of something good in your running game.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this off the air, but like when DeAndre Swift first came to the Bears, I thought he was a little bit, just being real, like I thought he was kind of standoffish, not like a jerk or anything like that, but just a guy that's not that interested in the media, polite about everything, not a loner. You see him talking to guys, but very quiet unassuming, all of that. And what you realize as time goes on, this is just a guy who takes his job more seriously than the next guy, works his ass off, is a straight up baller, and is one of these guys who is just legitimate in the words that he uses. What he says is what he thinks, even if it's earlier this year talking about how the penalties are killing them, even if Swift was making some of the penalties. All of a sudden, my eyes open. I'm like, this guy is affected by everything that goes on. He is legitimate. Oh, yeah. He is serious. And I misinterpreted some of that from DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, it's cool. And here's another thing that like we can provide as sort of the folks behind the curtain here. I think you and I both witnessed this post game. DeAndre Swift, they brought him to the podium post game after the big game that he had, and he met with the media for about 4 minutes or so. And then on his way out, there's a long line of visitors inside that press room. I think they might have been cancer survivors from today's cancer festivities here at Soldier Field, and he went one by one down a line of about 14 people and shook their hands and said, "Thank you for coming." And like, you're like, okay, like it's a very nice glimpse into who DeAndre Swift is. And again, I think it's nice for everybody in that locker room to see a guy who goes about his business like that be rewarded with the production he's had. Grody, this is only the first time in his Bears career that he's had back-to-back 100-yard outings, only the third time in his career. And so it's obviously a nice little express lane that he's in right now.
Yeah, I like that. You like seeing that with some veterans. Let's get to the defense, because another veteran. Maybe Kevin Byard is to the defense what DeAndre Swift has been to the offense. This unexpected production. 4 interceptions on the season for Kevin Byard. But let me go through some of this here, just for the benefit of the people listening. Nahshon Wright, Tremaine Edmonds, Kevin Byard all had picks. Montez Sweat had a forced fumble. I think the best tidbit I got in the locker room was from Kyler Gordon, just kind of opening it up to him and asking him about the day for the defense, him obviously with the sack, but he talked about what I wrote down as what I thought was the most entertaining defensive sequence I've seen the Bears have this year. It was in the second quarter, Dan. The Bears were leading 6-0. It's the sequence in which Kyler Gordon had a sack. I don't have this all in exact order, but Kyler Gordon, the sack, Jaquan Brisker, a sack, a loss of 9. You had a 3rd and 28, and Brisker gets called for the roughing. Then TJ Edwards, a near pick, a diving potential play. And then there's Nahshon Wright with the interception to save the day, a 39-yard return. That leads to the DeAndre Swift 11-yard touchdown. And he was right on, even with a ticky-tack foul called and all of that. That was a blast to watch the guys on that particular sequence, if I got it all right.
It was I'm looking in the official play-by-play here, and you had the Brisker sack. They actually credited Gordon for one earlier on the drive. There was that was the first play I said. The Gordon sack, Brisker Brisker roughing, Edwards near pick, Nahshon Wright pick. Right, and there it is. And I thought that interception, plus the return, which I think is significant, plus the return was the spark that the Bears needed, because that game was sloppy, and it was appropriately 6-0 at that point. And you're like, okay, this is going to be one of those days. The weather's not great. Everything's just a little bit sloppy, and we're going to be in for something that doesn't have a lot of juice. And then that sequence, obviously punctuated by the Nahshon Wright interception and return, kind of, I think, awakened the Bears there at a stretch where they needed to be awakened. Ben Johnson noted the return from Nahshon Wright enough after the game that he said, I thought Nahshon was going to go down 2 or 3 different times on that return, and he kept going. Might have to get him the ball on offense. So file that away in your notes there, Grote, that the head coach with the imagination who runs wild might have a little something up his sleeve to get the cornerback involved on the other side of the ball, which would be fun.
I like it. I'm starting to like Nahshon Wright. He's been burned a few times. Been burned a few times. He's had some penalties, but somehow, some way, he comes up with big plays, doesn't he?
He's got a good vibe about him too. Like I think he knows what his journey was to get this opportunity, and he's very appreciative of the fact that he's starting here. Look, like that's part of a day today again, where the defense just did it, right? Like they just did it. And Dennis Allen obviously had a lot at stake. You can speak to some of the personal emotions that I'm sure were in that he would never admit to us at a press conference, but he put his guys in position to succeed, and they succeeded. And again, that takeaway faucet is wide open, and you might need a plumber to get that thing shut.
You are hilarious. One more tidbit I'll share with you from the locker room centering on Montez Sweat. Before we give out some game balls, we got some game balls to give out. I know Dan might want to get off a couple more thoughts here, but let me give you this from Montez Sweat. Let's not forget about Montez Sweat. We talked. He had the forced fumble, obviously, early on. Very good. I think Javon Dexter, did he get credited with the
recovery?
The scoop?
Yep.
He did get credit with recovery. That so often it seems like that statistic can change throughout the course of a game because everybody's trying to figure out exactly who gets credit for it. But yeah, it was Javon Dexter. But Sweat also had a key sack. Oh no, it was the 4th and 1 stop. The 4th and 1 stop that he just met his man one-on-one right there. And he was kind of offended that they would come at him, offended that they would go for it on there. And he said something to the effect of, I don't want to mess this up. I should have brought the audio. I'll bring the audio on our next episode. But something to the effect of, you better bring your big boy trousers if you're going to come at us.
But like, Grote, like that's the edge that they are paying Montez Sweat to have all the time, right? Like, and that's the expectation. That's not the like pat on the back. Like that's who Montez Sweat should be. He should be changing the game at least once a half, if not once a quarter. And he did so today in a way that was impactful. And so that's bring your big boy trousers and hopefully they continue to offend Montez Sweat, because if that gets his juices going, then maybe that production will start to spike.
I hope I'm not conflating with Pat Hughes, who uses the word trousers on a daily basis. Pat Hughes, the Cubs play by wearing their white trousers today. So I'll go back. I will review the tape. But Dan, before we get you some closing comments, I'm going to give you, sir, we've got 2 game balls to give out like we do, unless Studs wants to give one out as well. Daniel, who is your game ball?
I'm going to go ahead and give it to Nahshon Wright. I do think, again, as we talked about just moments ago, that interception and the return. I think the return was significant. 38 yards that gave the Bears that short field again, which they capitalized on for the first time. Really was a big deal in the game. I will say that DeAndre Swift talked about scoring on the ensuing drive and said, hey, that was one where we took advantage of what the defense gave us, but they had 4 takeaways, and I sure as hell know we didn't have 4 touchdowns. So the offense understands that they've got to start capitalizing on those takeaways more. That was one where they did, thanks to Nahshon Wright. So he gets my game ball for that.
I love it. I cannot argue with Nahshon Wright. I will give my game ball to DeAndre Swift for his 124-yard performance, following last year's 100-yard performance. What's that?
Last week's, not last year's.
Oh, yeah. No, did I say last year? No, we don't want to go to last year. The trauma is real. So back-to-back 100-yard games for DeAndre Swift. Just big runs throughout the day. As you mentioned, Dan, popped up on the injury report this week with a groin injury. So, he wasn't playing 100%, but he is taking advantage of the openings, hitting them hard. DeAndre Swift, you get my game ball 2 weeks in a row. How about that? Studs, what you got, man?
I'm going to go with Kevin Byard. I like Kevin Byard is playing. Kevin Byard probably should have had 2 interceptions today. He kind of got, he had one in his hands. It was a pass basically right to him. And then Nahshon Wright almost hurt himself by running into Byard and broke up the pass incidentally. But I'm going to go with Kevin Byard. I think Kevin Byard is playing really well this year. And, I don't know if he's going to make All-Pro again, but he's back to that kind of level that he was at when he was playing All-Pro. He's a real ball hawk right now, so I'm going to go with Kevin Byard.
I don't know how much longer Kevin Byard wants to play, but the dude is earning himself some money this year. And by the way, Studs, he did say, because we asked him about, should have had a second interception. Of course, he was all over that. He said, paraphrasing, that he puts that down as an error, as in he should have, right, Dan, that he said he should have made the play.
He should have, but there was some friendly fire there, and he was unable to get that done. Nahshon Wright gave him a shot there, and it is what it is. Right?
I was going to say, I appreciate Kevin Byard being the wily vet and taking ownership of that one, but he was interfered with by his own teammate. By the way, don't act like Kevin Byard's some old man. He's 32 years old.
That's true. That's true. I guess I go by when a guy's been in the league for a decade. Like, doesn't that sound long? Yeah. Like, you're right. 32,
no doubt.
He's playing this league for 10 years. That's a long time. Yeah.
No, I understand where you're coming from, because back when I say back when, but when Eddie Jackson had his All-Pro season, the other best safety in the league that was talked about was Kevin Byard. So it
Mm.
feels like a long time ago.
Yeah.
So like I understand where you're coming from, but he's not an old man. You know,
No, that's a good point. Fair. No, that's fair, man. 32.
Yeah, you can play safety in your 30s at a high level. You know,
Yeah.
Charles Woodson played safety in his 30s. I mean, a Hall of Fame player, obviously, but played safety in his 30s for a good while.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Look,
good point.
You keep taking the ball away like that. You may get a trip to Orlando. Take the family to Disney World in January or late January, early February, whenever that game is.
I think he's on his way to a Pro Bowl season for sure. Like I said, I don't know if he'll make All Pro, but Pro Bowl is in the possibilities for Kevin Byard for sure. That's why he gets my game ball.
Gentlemen, my Dave the Cat is offended by the length of the podcast here, so I'm going to get us out of here. Dan, I mean, the only thing I'll say is I think what we can talk about throughout the week is like what we said, the putting together a good run game, a good defense, and a good passing game to make all those parts come together and talk about how is this 4-2 better than last year's 4-2? And
sure,
how
better be.
I think that's the answer. It sure feels like it, and it sure as hell better be. But that is something that we have to look at to see with a lot of season to go.
Two last things for me, Grote. The first is just an observation. The beneficiary of the offensive stalling out all day was Jake Moody, who made 4 more field goals. I joked with Kevin Fishbane somewhere in the second half. I said, at this pace, when will he break Robbie Gould's all-time scoring record for the Bears? We're going to have to do the math on that as week 8 moves along with the points that Jake Moody's putting up. And here's what I want to ask you. This is a little bit off the path here before we get out of here.
Sure.
Do you eat a lot here on game day? Because I find myself like having 30,000 calories in the press box, and today the halftime meal was all over the map, but it was all good. There was butternut squash ravioli plus turkey, Cajun spiced turkey, plus shepherd's pie, all in a row, and you're like, man, none of these things really go together, but I'm gonna have them all. And I felt like I kind of stuffed myself at halftime, and I don't know if it was a good choice or a bad choice.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I will tell you, I will see all of what you just said and raise you. I had something today called pea casserole, I think it was.
Okay.
It was, I don't even know what was in it, but it was really good, man. So I had a little bit of that.
We got to rename that, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Try our pea casserole.
Yeah, it's delicious and chunky. And then, the turkey was Cajun flavored, right?
Yeah.
Did you notice that? Right. Was that for our friends from New Orleans? Is that why they did that?
I believe so. Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just had a little. I did not overeat today. I never do at these things. The reason is then I just get sluggish, So I usually honestly, I'm gonna eat here in just a little bit as we're recording this here podcast after a Bears win, and it's into the evening. What time is it right now? It's 6:42. I will now involve myself in a meal.
I've got to drive home. I think there are some ribs waiting for me when I get in the door there for the Sunday night game tonight. So I'm eager for that. But man, yeah, it's just more. You gotta have more discipline than I have up here in this press box, and I'll work on that as the season moves along.
I tell you what, I'll keep an eye on you, buddy. I'll do whatever I have to do to keep you right.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Yes. That's gonna do it for us. Happy win. From us to you here on Take the North. For Dan Wiederer of The Athletic, for Adam Stasinski, our executive producer, I'm Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score, saying thank you for listening to and watching the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.